It is hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that means it's rapid fire time. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is still in the house after his fabulous triple option breakdown, and Bobby Hensley is with us once again. How are you tonight, Bobby?
I'm doing great. I really enjoyed the whiteboard there. Do you think
I like how I went out of my way not to say whiteboard, and then the first thing Bobby does is say whiteboard as we start off the second hour.
I'm just curious, Jesse, what do you think if a team has like a more depth of resources at recruiting, could they make that offense more successful than Navy does the best they can with what they have? But do you think that offense would actually work if a team was dedicated enough to just keep running it?
I do. I think if you had like a Riley Leonard led offense with like Alabama, offensive line, peak Derrick Henry, I don't know how you could stop them, because the whole goal of the triple option is to literally get 3 yards of play, because if it's 4th and 1, you're going to go for it every time. So if you had the athletes and you ran it to perfection, I think it's an unstoppable offense.
It's interesting because Paul Johnson obviously tried to make it work at Georgia Tech, and they had some success for a while having better athletes than what he had when he was at Navy. But obviously you go back to Lou Holtz, and that's exactly what he was doing with better athletes, with the Ismails and Waters and Johnsons and the Brooks of the world and Tony Rice in there. They were running triple option, and they had high-level athletes, and they won a national championship doing it. And they were still successful after the championship year doing that with different elements of the option.
But, I mean, they were close, but the fact that
the problem is you can't get those kind of guys now, because you can't sell guys who want to get to the NFL on running the triple option at the FBS level.
But like Notre Dame had Jerome Bettis and Reggie Brooks, which is the perfect combination for all of this, and they didn't quite make it all the way to the end for the championship. Obviously, a different system, different time. It's just, I don't know. You look at like stuff like Mike Bray used to do. He used to look at his roster and kind of shift his strategies. And I just feel like if you really dedicated yourself,
there was some Moneyball stuff
option,
in there for sure.
There you go, Moneyball. That's the triple option.
Help you out whenever I can.
Well, very little. Huh? Anyway, good to see you guys.
You too, Ricky Bobby Hensley. It's good to see you.
Yeah. I always forget that we're on the screen so people can see me.
Just a reminder, you can watch this show on either YouTube channel, the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel, or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. So after that side note, let's get into the stuff that we came here to talk about tonight. It's always good for Ricky Bobby to sidetrack us.
Shake and bake.
We get going. That's right. Shake and
bake.
So along with Notre Dame's number 10 ranking in the first college football playoff rankings this week, it's brought some backlash from the national media types who think the Irish are overhyped and overranked. Here's a headline from the USA Today hit piece by Matt Hayes. It reads, Notre Dame and CFP's unholy and unreasonable partnership, hard to ignore. That is the USA Today headline today. Hayes is not the only national guy who thinks that Notre Dame's ranking is undeserved, but he says the ranking is, quote, deference to the largest television property in the sport and nothing else, end quote, adding that Notre Dame's blue blood status is more important to the committee than earned results on the field. So, Jess, I'll start with you. What do you guys think of this?
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is to overreact about the first college football playoff poll when there's still 4 weeks left in the season, right? Like, I get it, like you have to start somewhere and someone is always going to be upset, but like let's be matter of fact about this. There's going to be at least one 2-loss team to get into the college football playoff. And I believe on paper right now, Notre Dame is the best 2-loss team in the country. If you watch them, they have a prolific offense. They have the best running back in the country. And if you listen to the selection committee say, early on in the season, they would not have had Notre Dame in their rankings because of the doubts that they had with their defense. But since the defense has turned it on and cleaned up their game, they feel like with Notre Dame's offense, they are the most complete 2-loss team in the country. And so, there's a lot of people are saying, well, Oklahoma and Texas have 2 losses and they have better wins and, yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, but Notre Dame has a loss to who would be the SEC champ, who Texas and Oklahoma play, in the same conference as.
Right. Ranked number
and
3.
And you also
by 1 point
have a loss to Miami, which is starting to, dwindle by the day, how good that actually looks. But I think the biggest thing that people are caught up on is Notre Dame doesn't have that quote unquote signature win like maybe Texas or Oklahoma does, but Notre Dame doesn't have quite as bad of losses as Oklahoma
Not even
and
close.
Texas does.
Not even
and
close.
So like that's
right.
the weighing factor. And I think this and the thing is too is if you want to take in like all the metrics of like, the BCS, the Sarkisian, the power, like Notre Dame is ahead of them in mostly all of those categories. And then you put together the eyeball test, which I think is a huge, significant part of the committee. Like you have to, like that's the whole reason why we have people and not just computers, because their job is to watch the games and just see. And they believe that Notre Dame's a better put together team in the moment than Oklahoma or Texas. But again, there's 4 weeks left in the season, and I guarantee more than 1 2-loss team makes the playoff before it's all said and done.
And look, I'll let you answer here in a minute, but I'll just add this thought to what Jesse is saying about there's 4 weeks left in the regular season, plus you've got conference championship weekend, and people talk about, well, should they be releasing, the college football playoff rankings? College football loves this. The college football playoff committee loves the fact that you get this kind. It's Jerry Jones marketing, whether it's good or bad. They like the fact that you're talking about it. And honestly, we need content. Doesn't everybody like the fact that we're talking about this stuff? Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was going to say exactly what Jesse was kind of getting at. There's so much time left in this season. There's so many matchups that are ranked on rank left in this season. The dominoes are just falling. They're going to continue to fall. The fact that this is posted this early in the season's on purpose. You took my point.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm glad
we actually
I'm glad
think
we
alike
agree.
On this one.
Yeah. The only reason it's there is for people like us to keep having content, to something to talk about, because it really doesn't matter. None of the numbers matter. We had a question on this show a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. It was, do you think Notre Dame will reach the top 10 again this year?
And now here they are.
And look how fast they got up there. Now all they have to do is win out, and they look like a guaranteed bona fide playoff team. And you talk about signature win. Yeah, maybe they don't have it yet, but once you get to the playoff, if they make it and host a playoff game, that's where you get signature wins. They did it last year. They've proven that they get better throughout the year. They've already had this blueprint. The fact that they played 2 tough teams at the beginning of the year, one of them on the road, one at home, I think that's incredible. That's great. That's what they're tied to, and it's wonderful that A&M's doing so well, and the Miami stuff starting to fizzle, but that's what this is all about. It's just too early to talk about why they're ranked over who, because here's my thing. If somebody's going to say Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, okay, who does over them then? Why does another team deserve it? Because I don't see a reason that you can put other teams above Notre Dame in the top 10.
Well, I mean, most people, the biggest outrage is the fact that Notre Dame has 2 losses, Miami has 2 losses, and therefore Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame.
That Miami has been trending down and Notre Dame has been trending up.
Exactly.
And that's where the eyeball test.
Because if you look at other data, it was at the beginning of the season, and everyone has known since the dawn of time and the start of college football, it is much better to lose at the very beginning of the season than it is in the middle or at the end of the season. Because here's a shock for everyone, who wants to look at all this in just pure black and white, which is most of this national media stuff. You become a different team as the season progresses. And that's exactly what Notre Dame has become. And, because like the other part of this, there's some irony, of course, in all of this, because most Notre Dame fans typically live under this umbrella of thinking that there's all this external bias working against Notre Dame. And honestly, I was preparing for that kind of argument potentially going into Tuesday night when they announced the rankings. But, it's been like the Andy Staples, Ari Wassermans, and now the Matt Hayeses of the world, who, as Michael Hahn says, Matt Hayes has been bashing Notre Dame forever. Like this is nothing new, but they've been the most vocal bashing the committee and bashing the rankings, the whole it's not fair. I'm sorry, nothing's really fair. It's what's feasible. But Hayes wants everyone to believe, if you read this, and I did, I clicked it, I read it, I wanted to see, what his whole argument was. He wants people to believe that Mark D'Antonio, the same Mark D'Antonio who coached against Notre Dame when he was at Michigan State in the peak of Notre Dame, Michigan State, back and forth and hatred and everything else, who is now part of the College Football Playoff Committee, that Mark D'Antonio is somehow part of a great conspiracy to make sure that Notre Dame's name brand carries the Irish into the playoffs. And Mack Rhodes, who's the selection committee chair, who's also the sitting athletic director at Baylor University, a school that is obviously in the Big 12 and has its own, like stake in this whole thing in terms of multiple bids and everything else. Mack Rhodes is the man behind the curtain pulling the strings for the Irish. Like everyone else, everyone's got their own agendas as well, but they're all part of this committee, and everyone's up in arms again about the head-to-head with Miami. But, like both of Miami's losses are worse than Notre Dame's losses, and Texas A&M is the number 3 team in the country, so like Hayes is also talking out of both sides of his mouth because, again, if you read what he's saying, he criticizes Notre Dame for the ACC scheduling agreement, saying basically they're just a bunch of cream puffs. Well, what conference is Miami in? The last time I checked, Miami is in the ACC. So, like, you're criticizing on the one hand.
And lost to one of those cream puffs.
Yeah, and lost to one of those cream puffs. And in the meantime, Notre Dame beat the snot out of NC State, and NC State has wins against two of the, the two best teams in the ACC this year, which right now are Virginia and Georgia Tech. But there's also the fact that Notre Dame has the number 14 scoring offense in the country and the number 24 scoring defense in the country. And of course, the defensive aspect is very important because, as you said, Jesse, the improvement over the course of the year and how Notre Dame is a much different team now, especially defensively, than they were at the beginning of the season when they played that game against Miami, especially when you consider that they have played 2 of the top 11 scoring offenses in the nation. They totally stymied Arkansas, who is also ranked number 24 in scoring offense. So, I mean, Notre Dame obviously has a lot of things going in their favor, and there's a lot of other data to consider other than just one game that was at the start of the season that's what, 10 weeks ago at this point.
Well, it's like Jesse said, too, the eyeball test is what's important, right? And that's what we were talking about. That's what everybody's going to talk about for Notre Dame the rest of the year. They're playing these people they have to win. Do you think on the eyeball test, if they played Miami again, that they could be able to beat them? Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what leads to me to my final point is if you want to, counter these what I'll call idiots, ask them if they played in a neutral field and we hit up FanDuel Sportsbook, who the betting favorite would be.
Right. Like Jesse, you talked about, like that comment that Marcus Freeman made about how when they came out, when they went to halftime at Miami, they said, look, we've got to open this thing up. We've got to let CJ Carr cook a little bit, and things look different in the second half. They were guarding certain things, guarding against certain unknowns. Chris Ash obviously was running a completely different defense at that point. I think that if you played that game again right now, neutral field, Notre Dame would probably be at least a 3.5 point favorite going in, at least a 3.5 point favorite. And I think that Notre Dame would win that game because of look at what Carson Beck has turned into and what CJ Carr has turned into, as again, 2+ months down the road.
Yeah. I mean, they lost that game by a field goal and they're better on offense and defense.
Right. Yeah, so it's at least 3 points different. Yeah.
There was a question in the mailbag that we didn't get to last week that I think applies to this conversation that we're having about Notre Dame right now. Yeah, they're ranked number 10 in the college football playoff ranking right now. The question from Lou Holt's grandson from the Irish Breakdown Champions Lounge, is Notre Dame truly elite this year or just very good? He said, basically, can they beat Ohio State or is it unlikely? I'm just as big a Notre Dame fan as anyone, but the reality is they have 2 losses, and that has to mean something because Ohio State would likely not have lost to either Miami or Texas A&M. So what do you guys think about that? Is Notre Dame truly elite or very good?
I want to say they're elite offensively because I don't think that there is a team in the country that has a better running back situation and also a better passing attack in the country. Like the combination of they can put you in a bind of, do you want to commit another player to the box? Well, that means we have the resources to pass over your head. Do you want to put another player in coverage? Well, that just means we'll let our, Heisman level / 2 NFL running backs run all over you, right? And so offensively, I think they're there. And the thing is, and I think the reason why I led with that is I don't think that, like, Ohio State's offense isn't as good as it was last year. Like, I don't think there's as many elite offenses that Notre Dame's defense would have to worry about this year, right? Like, Notre Dame's defense obviously isn't elite yet, and it's not as good as it was last year. But I also think the overall makeup of college offenses, like, they're not overly great this year. And I think Notre Dame could compete with you in a shootout if it came down to it. And I think they have one of the very few offenses who could take it to a team like Ohio State.
No, I think you're absolutely right that if they can compete with Ohio State, and I don't even know that Ohio State should be the litmus test. I don't know that they're the best team in the country. They're undefeated, sure, and ranked number 1, but I don't think that necessarily means they're the litmus test. They might lose a game in the Big Ten championship game and then fall down in the rankings, and Notre Dame might end up ahead of them. Who knows? But yeah, they could compete with them. I think their dynamic offense keeps them in every single game. It's amazing because when you started the season, you were thinking, oh, the defense, we don't got to worry about that. Let's see what this rookie quarterback will do and how the offense performs. And they've done exceptional. And it's the defense that needed to grow up a little bit, and they have. They kept getting better. So I don't know that if they can beat Ohio State. Sure, I think they can. I don't think that it really matters, though. I think Texas A&M might be tougher than Ohio State, and they were in that game. And if they, like we were just talking last,
I think there's a case for Texas A&M to be number 1 right now. I think there's a case for Indiana to be number 1. I think that Ohio State is getting, like, they have a nice win over Texas.
They're defending champs.
How
That's
good
why
is
they're
Texas?
number 1.
Yeah, they haven't lost since Thanksgiving last year, like Thanksgiving weekend when they lost to Michigan. Interesting comment that I am Tenzin, I am the son of Ang made in the YouTube chat. Ohio State had 2 losses last year. Do you know how much those 2 losses were by? A combined total of 4 points, which is the same number of Notre Dame's 2 losses this year. So, yeah, Ohio State ended up winning the national championship last year, but they had 2 losses in the regular season, including one that they had no business losing to in Michigan. And everyone thought that was going to derail them, very similar to how people thought that Notre Dame losing to NIU would derail them. And, like we were talking about Backlash, obviously, there were plenty of people who didn't think Notre Dame deserved to be in the playoff or have their ranking last year because of the fact that they lost to NIU. But, I don't think that they're elite right now, but they're trending in the right direction. Like Jesse said, I think that they've got an elite offense, and they do have a better offense, or at least a much more diverse offense, as he outlined there, than compared to last year. But the defense is also getting back to where it needs to be, and that's the fact that they've allowed only a little over 12 points a game over the last 5 games, and the 5 teams that they've beaten in this stretch combined to average over 26 points per game. So they're holding those teams, to less than half of what they typically average. Arkansas scored less than 24 points once this season, and that was the 13 that they scored against Notre Dame. And they've scored more than 30 points more times than than they've even scored 24 points. So look at last year. There was a point in the season where you said, or was there a point in the season where you said Notre Dame is truly elite? Because their signature win last year was Texas A&M, and then they turned around and lost to NIU the next week. They played a comparable schedule last year, maybe even slightly worse because of the fact that you played 2 service academies and 2 MAC teams. But Georgia's number 5 right now. There are plenty of questions with them, like to all the backlash and hate that Notre Dame is getting for even being number 10. I mean, there are arguments and like head-to-head comparisons where, like, is Notre Dame better than Oregon? Is Notre Dame actually better than Georgia? Just because they happen to have one loss, so they're obviously going to be ahead of them right now. But I think the margin is a lot thinner, but I think that Notre Dame is very good right now in trending toward the chance to be elite by the time it's all said and done, just like last year.
Well, the term elite in itself, I get why we're talking about it, and it gives us content. We kind of talked about that earlier. How many elite teams are there in college football?
Right, and that's what I was getting at, Bobby. Like, I don't think that there is one complete elite team this year. I think Ohio State has probably the most elite defense, but their offense isn't nearly what it was last year, in my opinion, right? And so that's the hard part is I think Notre Dame has components of eliteness right now, but they're not a fully complete elite team yet.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. Even their Ohio State's win over Texas. Texas didn't look elite at the time. Maybe they've gotten better throughout the year, like Notre Dame has. But Notre Dame might have a better resume right now than Texas, hopefully, to get in because their losses aren't as bad unless Miami keeps losing and makes them look bad. But yeah, I just don't think there's a single elite team that's like, okay, well, they deserve to be the number 1 seed. We know going into the playoffs that's just where they're going to be.
Joe says elite is not Notre Dame. They need a kicker. Oh, we'll see if they found him when Eric Schmidt takes over the duties this weekend. I mean, that's, again, like with the 4 games that they've got left in the regular season, kicker shouldn't be an issue. We'll find out just how good Pittsburgh is next week. Jesse's going to that game in Pittsburgh, but you're that kicker is gonna be a factor once you get into the playoff, and that's obviously something that they've got to get figured out. And we'll see if they can start to get it figured out this weekend. Scale of 1 to 10, though, how confident are you Notre Dame ends up hosting a playoff game again this year?
The fan in me wants to say like 9 out of 10, but I think a more realistic is like a 6 or 7 out of 10. But the first thing I texted you and Vince after this when the first committee ranking came out is Notre Dame is in a great spot because they're in 10th place, and if they win their last 4, you can't move them out of the college football playoff, in my opinion. If you win these last 4, really what you're jockeying for is to play a home game and slip into that 8 seed. So I'm going to give this a solid 6 or 7 out of 10. And to me, it's either Notre Dame misses the playoffs or they host a playoff game. There's really no in between, in my opinion. But, I think you obviously need to root for, BYU to give Texas Tech their second loss. You want Iowa to beat Oregon this weekend. Like, there's still a few things that need to happen in front of them, but it's not like it's like this crazy, you need 10 things to happen and there's like a less than 1% chance. Like, there's 4 games left. There's conference championships games left, and Notre Dame started at 10. And so you can to move up 2 spots is really not that hard of an ask. So I'm going to land on a 7 out of 10 out of this. And I will say I will be in attendance if they do host again.
So you're saying that they only have you would only be a 7 out of 10 confident that they make the playoffs even?
I mean, to me, it's the same. It's almost the same question.
Right.
Because if you lose, you're done. And I think if you win the rest of your games, you're hosting the playoffs.
Into that because you've only got to move up 2 spots at this point to be the number 8 seed to host.
And you have Texas Tech and BYU in front of you in one of those
each other, and some of these other teams are going to start playing each other. There's going to be some things that are going to happen in front of them, just like with last year.
Right.
And by the way, they started off at number 10 in the initial poll last year and got all the way up to number 5. Now they ended up, of course, being the 7 seed because of the old way that they were doing the seeding, but they rose 5 spots. So that's I'm just going to go ahead and give my answer and say my confidence is an 8 that if they win out, they'll move up at least 2 spots, if not more, which is going to put them into hosting. So I'm very confident that they're going to end up hosting as long as they win out, kind of going off what you said, Jess. It's an either or situation. Either you're winning out and you're going to end up hosting because of these other teams playing each other and they're going to knock each other out, or you're going to suffer a loss and you're not going to be in the playoff at all.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The 8, I don't see a way that they don't win out, and I think that they'll obviously be hosting. You just got to look behind them almost to see if there's any teams that can possibly jump them with what their schedules are left. But I think Notre Dame is in control of their own destiny, which is a nice place to be, obviously. But they just keep winning. They keep looking good. They're going to host a playoff game.
Which is odd because Brock Osweiler kept telling us last week during the Boston College game that Notre Dame does not control its own destiny because of the fact that they're not in a conference, like that old cliche time after time.
Can we post a poll in the Champions Lounge? When did you hit mute on that game last week? Because I hit mute at like the beginning of the third quarter.
I wish I would have, but it's hard for me to, as much as I try not to focus on the stuff that they're saying, it became very difficult, but I also don't like just complete silence when I'm watching.
Oh, I put on Apple Calm Radio because Osweiler was making me so mad.
Now, I think it was third quarter of Brock that I was like, I just can't listen to him. I can't take him seriously. He just doesn't make sense. And I don't know where he got that gig from to begin with.
Well, it's one thing to kind of double down, triple down on this whole narrative that he was creating, but like they're just the most boring people too. It was just like listening to monotone hot takes. It's like, at least if you're Stephen A, you're up there yelling and screaming about stuff. But like with Brock Osweiler, it's like you are like just the most monotone man in the world. I don't want to listen to anything you have to say.
Robin in the YouTube chat says, never listen to the TV announcers. Listen to Notre Dame announcers. Good call. My problem is it's very distracting if you don't have it synced up, and I didn't have the patience to try to get it synced up. I know Vince knows kind of the secret to doing that when he watches some basketball sometimes, but I don't have that same patience to get it synced up. But that's what back before, the proliferation of internet and streaming and all that different stuff. When I was in college, that we did that all the time. We would turn down the sound on the TV, and whether it was the Kansas Jayhawks or, all of my buddies were big Chiefs fans and stuff like that, we would turn the TV sound down, and we would mute the TV, and we would have the radio broadcasts all the time. It was awesome. Just like it's more intense feel. It's a lot more fun listening to the radio guys.
I think you get more ambient noise too, which sounds pretty cool. You feel like you're there more than you do watching a television.
For sure.
Television.
It's like having it in surround sound when you're doing it. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame and Auburn announcing a football home and a home for 2027 and 28 is blank.
Hopefully it is silencing the haters, because you start to look at Notre Dame's schedule forecast for the next 5 to 10 years. You got some big names on there. You got Auburn, you got Texas, you got Alabama, you've got Clemson, Arkansas. And I think there's
the 28 schedule.
Yeah, the 28 schedule is ridiculous.
Here's the 28 schedule. Like, for anyone who's been pining for some old school, no one can complain about this schedule. Texas, September 9th, then Arkansas, then Purdue. But Auburn, Virginia Tech, Clemson, Navy, Boston College, Miami, at Pittsburgh. Like, that's a schedule right there. And that's not even a full schedule.
And it's like it's just so funny to me, because Notre Dame puts the names on their schedule, but they can't control what those teams are going to be. Like, you can't control what Arkansas
those teams
was
will be bad and
people
will complain. So
right, yeah. But I think Notre Dame is doing their job. They're doing their due diligence. They're holding up their end of the bargain, and they're putting these big names on the schedule. They're not afraid to do so.
I think you're absolutely right. You got to keep doing that. If you want to be an independent, you got to go out and get these matchups. You have to put these big names on your schedule. And we don't know how good Auburn will be in 2028, but we do know that schedule looks really loaded. And even like a team like Purdue, they might every now and again, they get these sneaky good years. And if they keep being on the schedule, they're at some point, they're going to be one of the top teams too. And then you have Clemson, and then you have Arkansas. You remember, it wasn't that long ago in my lifetime that anytime Notre Dame played the SEC, it was almost scary. Like, oh, they're going to lose. Now it's so exciting to see them play these SEC schools, because you know that they're going to put up a good fight, and they're probably going to be winning most of those games, hopefully. So I think that it's awesome, and it's what they have to do to keep these, to stay independent. I think they're committing to it, and then it's awesome that these schools are continuing to schedule Notre Dame is a big point for them too, because it means something for Auburn too, I'm sure.
Clontarf is asking if more of these shows that I promote can be on YouTube. I mean, I can't control it. We do work at a radio station now, so I can't control like what's YouTube and what's not, but we do it in affiliation with Irish Breakdown and the college football
playoff.
No, the College Football Nation show is in conjunction with Irish Breakdown. But yeah, I mean, look, Pete Bavacqua was talking a couple of weeks ago when Dan Patrick was in town about the list of teams that still want to play Notre Dame. And I think that this is a prime example. When you look at all these SEC schools in the future that are going to be on Notre Dame's schedules, and the fact that, as we kind of keep repeating, look, people want to play Notre Dame. And
well, the money helps. And the ratings.
And the fact that the SEC has required its schools to play a 10th game beyond just the 9 conference game, against an FBS opponent, beyond just the 9 conference games that they play. I think that is a pretty nice factor as well, and it works in Notre Dame's favor. Real quickly, Green Bay Packers wore those 1923 throwback helmets last weekend. They were supposed to replicate the leather helmets from that era. What did you guys think of that look? Got about a minute and a half to go here.
I think they're ugly. I think they're banned. I think they should never be worn again. And I think you should double not wearing them after seeing the Packers lose at home to that Panthers team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the idea sounds great in theory. Like, oh, they're going to have a throwback leather helmet, but it just didn't work. And it looked really gross with the jerseys. I don't know if it'd be okay with their normal jerseys, but if you're going to lose to Carolina, it doesn't really matter. Like Jesse just said.
Didn't they just look like it was obvious that they just took a laminate and put it over the helmet? Like it just looked like bad. It looked like something like I grew up in the 80s. It looked like something that you would see in the 80s, with just this bad laminate. Like the idea was in the right place, but it's like, look, that was over 100 years ago. We know it's not an actual leather helmet. Like the ones that Notre Dame used, I think it was against Navy a few years back, wasn't it? When they did those Rockney throwbacks, like they still weren't perfect because again, it's a modern helmet, but they looked at least a little bit closer to what they were trying to accomplish. It just looked like a horrible laminate replica when it came down to it.
Yeah, it was the Wish version of helmets. It wasn't even Walmart quality.
Yeah, exactly. It was like old, my mom used to sell this stuff called home interiors in the 80s, and that's what it reminded me of, was like bad looking fake, candelabras. And
I don't know, it might be better that they lost, because imagine if they had won like by a lot and had all these highlight plays that they had to have all these highlights of those stupid uniforms on.
I think Tommy has a crush on you when it comes down to it. He's been just throwing all kinds of shots at you.
It's fine.
Tonight.
I like it.
All right. Well, I just realized we are behind, so we've got to wrap this sucker up. Jesse's got that spread option coming up at 7 on the CFP Nation YouTube channel. Bobby, enjoyed it as always, no matter what Tommy says. Jesse, enjoyed it. I will talk to you tomorrow. Brian will be in here with some recruiting news as well. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. And we will talk to you then. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.